said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you filthy... Flyover State of Fear.
Welcome back to Flyover State of Fear. We got Brian, and I got a great guest for you this time, Courtney Eck of the Please Leave podcast, amongst others. How are you, Courtney?
So well, how are you?
Doing well.
Good.
Really appreciate you coming on. I was as one does these days, scrolling through TikTok and saw some of Courtney's horror focused TikToks, mainly about movies, and then of other things like your podcast, like horror shorts, and promoting that. I was pretty interested. So just that the shot of, would you like to do a podcast? Then either it's yes, here's my email, and you actually this happens, or it's sure, here's my email, and then you send 3 follow-ups. So thank you for not being a follow-up, Courtney.
Yeah, I've been a producer for 15 years, so I always follow through. It's producer karma. If you don't do it, you're not going to get it in return.
Somebody will burn you later. It's just going to come right around.
Yes,
right?
sir. I'm not going to lie. It's 7:30 p.m. tonight. I was like, oh God, I got to get off the couch.
Oh, I appreciate it.
No, I mean, I was looking
off.
forward to it, but it's like making plans. There's nothing better than breaking plans you've made. But horror is just about the only thing in this world that'll get me off the couch, because I love horror. I love talking about it. I love thinking about it. I love making it. So thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. Tell us a little bit about like the Please Leave podcast, and just kind of your I guess what you are up to in your creativity and all of that. And
Yeah. So I started Please Leave in earnest. I started previously kind of writing these horror stories. Essentially, I'll back up a little bit. I watch everything, like every horror fan. I consume every bit of horror that's available. And I was feeling a little frustrated with audio versions of horror. I wasn't feeling scared, to be quite honest, by a lot of it. And there is a lot of really good horror there are good horror podcasts. There is good audio horror, not to completely generalize, but
and podcasting has reopened a kind of line of like fictionalized horror in audio formats too, that was kind of long dormant, which I think is very interesting, radio play style. Like, I think that's kind of a cool thing to have come back.
Yeah, and it's hard to do, and I didn't realize how hard it was to do until I started doing it, and realizing how much you rely on your eyes to get scared, or when you're trying to scare people. And so I was feeling a little frustrated by I'm the kind of person, I'm hyper focus on something, I'll consume all of it. And so hit a wall and had just listened to everything and couldn't wait long, like more content couldn't come out fast enough. So I decided to try my hand at it. So I started writing stories and recording them myself. I have another podcast, so I have some experience, being behind the microphone. And at first it was literally just me, and some of the episodes still are just me.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I think some of them don't have sound effects. Most of them do. I've gone back through and given some new passes at it, but it was just, I like the idea of like a lonely voice in a room. Sometimes I think that's really scary and unsettling. So I just, I learned from my other podcasts, you just got to do it. And as you guys have learned, you just do it and you just get slightly better at it as you go. And
I don't even want to listen to early episodes, even in this show.
For that part, I was like, I can't wait to get slightly better at it.
Like, I sent people,
rough.
The playlist for this show, and I want to be like, just don't listen to the first 6 on that playlist.
Yeah,
I've talked about it a couple times, but like the first thing I ever did, my first podcast, I wanted to make I was part of like a kind of group channel where a bunch of people were posting on the same channel, like different shows. And I wanted to like put up a little promo first. And I tried to script a little promo for myself. and it was so embarrassing. I sent it to like the guy who was like working as our producer, and he was just like, he was very kind to like talk me down from doing that. He's like, you just got to go more natural. You're a talker. Just let yourself kind of have an idea of what you want to say and go with that. Do not. It was So it's
we've all been there. I mean,
the growth
absolutely.
can be very long.
Yeah. And my other podcast is conversational. I do it with my sister, and I can't. There's no way I would shut the entire thing down before I'd go back and listen to old episodes, because I don't want to hear that. But at some point I started asking friends who have nice voices to perform episodes, and that got me more excited because I got really sick of editing my own voice and feeling frustrated because I'm not an actor, feeling frustrated by those limitations. And then I started posting auditions to Voice 123, which is just kind of a giant voice actor site that I recommend.
I was gonna make it.
Go ahead.
I apologize. I was going to make a bad joke. Say, if you ever need a deep voice, I got you. But
you have a great voice. I noticed that right away. No. And at one point, an actor named Ben Chandler, who lives in London, auditioned, and it's sort of the first time in my life where I cared about my art. All of a sudden I cared about the thing I was making, because he sort of brought it to life. He's the voice that's been in my head, writing these things, and as I've written things over the years. It was pretty revelatory. So then I started hiring more professional actors, and I do like to keep it pretty curated. I like a certain level of quality, and also for the artists, I like for it to be worth their while, for them to be getting work as often as possible. Those things are important to me. So I have a team right now of 6. I would like to get a couple more, but it's basically 6 actors. There's 4 of us writing the stories, and I'm very proud of it. I do all the editing and sound design and things, which is probably my favorite part. I love writing the stories, but I really geek out on the sound stuff and making spooky shit and throwing myself on the ground if I can't find the right body sound.
Cool sound design is so important, especially when you're with it. You're talking about, you know what I mean?
I love that, and I can't wait to dive into some of those episodes, learning more about that and just the craft and horror you put into that, because it is nice. Like, I mean, I know I sit at a desk all day, so breaking podcast and music up with a full story would be awesome. It's fun, and it's kind of a good mental exercise too. When I started, it was just me writing, and I it's like, can I do this every week? Because I like a weekly podcast. A lot of narrative podcasts are every other week, or they do we're bi-weekly, and it's a management.
That's why we don't have. That's why people fall off. They can't. They get.
I mean, it really does make a difference.
Get that content going if you want to make a real following. It's true.
Hey,
we're unserious. Admit it.
If you want to record, like 5 a week and just then flood them out.
My family. It's being around your family's overrated anyway.
No, that's amazing. Fine. But so Courtney, on this show, we do ask before we do we're talking about Sinister today, and before we get into Sinister,
you saw the thumbnail. Joe made a beautiful thumbnail. You know it. You saw it.
What is your horror origin story? And like, I always put it out there. You can answer that as any way as you want to. Whether it's the movies or how getting to the storytelling aspect or whatever. Really, I've
presented at least 3 over the course of all the podcasting I've done, I think.
I was gonna say,
I imagine lanes.
I imagine if most people who are huge horror fans kind of were born that way. I think, I don't remember ever just not being absolutely fascinated by the genre and seeking it out, even as a really small kid. And my mom was very specifically against Freddy and Jason. No Freddy, no Jason. And I think she actually meant, like, in general, I think her saying no Freddy, but I took it very literally. And so I watched every other horrible thing I could get my hands on.
Jason.
I didn't watch Freddy and Jason as a kid.
Oh man, but that's how it sticks.
That pushes you into the fringe shit right away, though, the weird stuff,
That's exactly right. Yeah. Now, if my mom had only known the weird
right.
shit
She
I was
actually,
watching,
that's what I'm saying. You're better off to just like go with the flow and
You're
like, let
like,
your kid discover it naturally.
yeah,
you're like,
because Freddie and Jason are pretty tame in comparison to most
Absolutely,
things
absolutely.
that came out in
Especially
the
if you were
80s.
like, I don't know what age you were, but like if it was the time like around the sequels, like I know as a kid getting into Freddie and Jason, you kind of find the sequels first when you're young because they're more
oh yeah,
family friendly, but you know what I mean, like especially the Freddies, the late stage Freddies get very silly,
so goofy.
I think I've said this story multiple times on this show. Is I remember being 12, 13, and in that age, like going to see Freddy vs. Jason, weirdly enough, in theaters, and early day screening. And the only other person in the theater was a mother with a much younger son. And I'm young. I'm at that time, I'm like a child, shouldn't be in there.
Yeah.
Stays for all the killing. And in the first like gratuitous nudity scene, eyes covered, running out like it's almost comedic. And I'll never forget that imagery. But yeah, but I think it's like you say, like when your mother especially says you can't watch this thing. My parents let me watch almost anything. But I remember, weirdly enough, except for Scary Movie, and it's only because we peeked into the theater when we were going to see another movie. My mom saw like once again some sexual thing going
really
on
like
and it was like for years
comedy in that, you know what I mean? I actually understand why it's like,
it was
understandable. A kid can understand violence before we can get into like what's going on in some of those scenes.
To watch any other comedy except that one. So but funny. Courtney, anyone kind of stand out to you of the uniqueness?
For sure. It's actually The Changeling, the 1980s George C. Scott.
Yeah, George C. Scott. I love that movie. I just watched that for the first time like last year, I think.
No kidding. What'd you think?
It was great. I loved it. I love that. There's like a genre of kind of like late 70s white dudes going mad kind of movies that, you know, I hate to say it, but of course they will speak to you. Speak to me? Why wouldn't they? Like recently Burnt Offerings is another one that I really think is great too, with Oliver Reed. But
but no, the Changeling, I mean, like that's such a serious, mature. I would be if someone even today said, oh, I'm in a horror movie, I'd be like, oh, is this one? But it's a mature horror movie, more not like just like emotionally immature.
Yeah, but think about it. Being 8 years old, and it was our slumber party horror movie, and I come from a really small town, and so there weren't very many of us, and we were all obsessed with it, and I think it was just very effectively spooky. And now growing at someone who's kind of obsessed with sound design, I think a lot of it was the ball and the little boy and the slamming against the tub and his voice, is so haunting. And the woman doing the seance with the scribbling and the guys like repeating what she's writing next, it's just really spooky shit. And as an adult, I'm like, okay, it hits a little less hard, but as an 8-year-old, it was just absolutely terrifying for us. So that, now I'm like, damn, this is like a still beautiful kind of atmospheric ghost story. But as a kid, it was just like the scariest thing any of us had ever seen.
They put a copy of that out on I think Severin, one of those boutique horror or the Blu-ray labels, and it's a really nice transfer. I've watched it pretty recently.
Nice.
And
it's really beautiful.
And that's I love that you picked that. That would be like if you gave me 100 guesses of like, if you gave me 100 guesses if I got into horror movies and they were not Freddy and Jason from 75 to let's say 85, just to I think the Changeling might be like 45. But then
that's fair.
that's one, and we'll move in a second. I always thought it was unique too. I'm a big fan of like young adult horror stuff and watch them all. And a couple years ago they rebooted in a mini series Are You Afraid of the Dark? It was like this It's actually not a bad reboot miniseries. It's just a tight story. But the kids, to test their horror knowledge, go, and what, they're like kids in 2014, 15 or whenever. Have you seen The Changeling?
Really?
Yeah, sort of. And that just had to be like an in pull from
I was gonna say some like film nerd who's writing that movie, like snuck that one in there.
But that's the one they pull. And
you got to get more and more obscure though. Like back when Scream came out, you could be like, "Oh, Halloween," and that was like. Now that's not going to fly anymore. Everybody's seen all those. Everybody's, you got to go deeper if you're going to like really show your street cred.
Even like something like Suspiria, you'd be like, yeah, sure.
Been there, done that. Well, the funny thing is the other movie
about Inferno.
The other movie that I remember earliest was, other than like Critters and Ghoulies and things like that, was American. I think it's called American Gothic.
Hell yeah, my wife introduced me to this movie. It's like one of her childhood
movies. So
it.
Yeah, it's really hard to find. I haven't watched it as an adult. It is twisted as shit. So I feel like those were like the polar extreme opposite.
Real like messed up kind of like weird family, like
Yeah, Fairy Hills Have Eyes on an island, and
Oh yeah. I'm looking that up right now.
With she played Lily the lady who played Lily Munster is the lead in that. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. I can't
either.
I have it right here. I know Brian always makes fun of me because I like to Google while we podcast.
Googling on the show.
Yeah, it's crucial.
You got to get that Google going.
Let's see. She played
That's
Lily
a great
Munster.
one. That's another great pick. Another a deep cut.
Yvonne DiCarlo?
Yeah, Yvonne DiCarlo. Sure, absolutely.
His mom. You could buy a Blu-ray of it. I mean, it's
on Blu-ray. All right.
Let's see. Amazon has fooled me before.
I have a DVD.
It's a region. It's American region Blu-ray. That is, it'll fool you.
You gotta watch out.
That's great. It's so interesting always to hear what people discovered at the young age, because sometimes it's the cliches. Like for a while on this show, a lot of people would just do, or there was a run of people saying The Ring, of like certain age.
Of a certain age. Well, that's the thing, it's going to get even more diverse now with streaming. More people are going to find so obscure things.
Oh my god!
Cable helped us all kind of watch the same stuff.
That's
not really the case now.
There's gonna be a kid like, one time I saw Stitches because it was on the Roku channel.
Totally,
and you're like, what are those two things?
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, speaking of The Ring, and I'm terrible at transitions, but that actually ties into Sinister because it's a huge influence on that movie.
Yeah.
But Courtney, anything else to your horror origin story that you want to bring in and add?
Stephen King. Speaking of cliches, it was all Stephen King. Yeah.
Okay.
The entire catalog.
Books, movies.
I have on writing sitting here next to me. Books primarily, and the good movies.
The good movies.
Yeah. I finally actually just watched The Mist for the first time last week. And it's amazing.
Thomas Jane Mist. That was so good.
It's so good.
Just
knocking
out
fabulous. I just was, I didn't want to watch people fight in a grocery store for 2 hours, and I was like, how good could it be? Fucking great, as it turns out. It's a really good movie.
Highly recommend. That's a Flyover approved recommendation. Watch The Mist, everybody.
That's Brian. We got to pocket that one.
that's back pocket.
I like to think The Mist has gotten more love over the years too. I remember
it got to the level where it got a black and white cut. That always means something.
Sure.
Logan, Mad Max. That means at least there's like a group of really passionate nerds who really were into it. That's something.
Am I messing up my trivia here? Is it Frank Darabont?
Yeah, Frank Darabont.
Yeah, okay, it is.
Yeah.
I have a 3-pack, and I wish it came in that 3-pack, but it's like his artsy movie, or not drama movies that come with Darabont 3.
Yeah, but it was so fun to see him do something awful.
Yeah,
with monsters.
We used to be obsessed with as kids, and my brother, not obsessed. the book and then the movie Cujo, we used to be like, that's so scary.
Yeah.
And then even the movie I've seen recently, and it's just, it has that old effect where it was like, I wish I never revisited it, just because it's a little not as terrifying as the
book is so scary. It's such a and it's like, why? How could who would ever write a book that's just a lady in a car for 2 days or 4 days or whatever? It sounds like such a huge hill to climb as a writer.
I think Cujo holds up pretty good, viewers.
I'm not saying it doesn't.
Tell Joe in the comments why.
I'm not saying it doesn't hold up that much, but it didn't hit the same. Now I'm gonna use the transition because that's kind of where I'm at with Sinister. Not hold up wise.
This segue brought to you by Segway.
I'm terrible at segues. But Courtney, no, that was super. I'm still not over your pick of the Changeling because
so good.
That's
I'll
I'm
take
like,
this. How about this? Tell us why you picked your Changeling pick was so good.
Yeah.
Tell us why you picked Sinister for this episode.
Yes, thank you.
That's
Brian.
how you do it, Joe. Take a note, man.
Thanks,
Brian. Courtney, you're great. Go on.
I'm just showing off because we got a guest. That's all.
Yeah.
So 2 reasons I picked Sinister. The biggest one being that I was like, well, I'm making a podcast. It's all about sound design, and it's definitely a huge part of my life right now. And I think that Sinister uses sound in a way that I would be hard pressed to pick another movie that does the same thing that they did with sound in that movie. And it's definitely not my favorite movie. I really enjoy it.
I enjoy it. I was making it's
no for me, because like I kind of used to have an anti-Ethan Hawke thing, and I had to realize that he
came back around. It's weird. Yeah.
I realized that it was because I hated him so much in like Reality Bites that I let that like poison me for a really long time. And I had to kind of be like, no, he's actually quite good in things. You should really give him more of a chance.
Brian, this is when me and you have the age that the roughly 10-year age difference as works. I'm like, yeah, but him and Gattaca I absolutely like was into.
No, I had the exact same thing. He's kind of a genre
guy. Like you don't really realize like he's really does a lot of genre work. It's kind of great. He does a lot of sci-fi. He does a lot of horror. Yeah, we like Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
And it's a goofy movie. I mean, there are parts of it that are straight up just dumb.
I'm excited to get into that. But you remember in your email you mentioned, and also on the top of it, like you have your hand in the true crime too. World as well. Like
100%. This movie gets made in 2017
he's
to
a podcaster.
Now. This guy's a podcaster, right? We all know it. I was laughing with my wife. I was like, I can't believe how quickly podcasting became a career that you see on TV. It's in like every third show now.
I fired up the Blu-ray today, and in its special features there were 2. One of which was just a middling produced, like that boring, like old school History Channel style documentary on true crime authors and how it affects their life, like how they're different from journalists and this. But it really did a poor job of tying it to the movie. Like it was just like, here's a case, here I got into it.
It's
it was like
sort
some
of
random
related thing.
It felt like a History Channel show you'd watch in like a class somewhere, not like one on like modern day. And the other special feature was about living in a haunted house, and it was just highlighted this, like, this is how well I was paying attention to the thing, like something like Ohio family murders house. It wasn't Ohio, but it was something like that, and it was just like, people tour and it's really haunted, and it was like so that's where like at least the people,
it was more like a commercial for like a tourist trap.
And that's like where like
for the Travel Channel
special features of this were together.
Wild.
But Sinister's interesting pick, but you're with the sound too. I think this is where this comes in 2020 there was a study conducted.
I was gonna bring it up.
Okay.
If you're about to say what I
was gonna bring it up.
Well, my second. Let me give you my second point real quick, and then we'll see if it segues into what you're about to say. The other reason I like this movie is because I've given myself the challenge to watch it like 3 or 4 times by myself at night, thinking it's not that scary. It's kind of a dumb movie. It scares the absolute shit out of me.
Okay.
And it is the only movie that makes me physically scared.
Interesting.
I'm not easily scared. I've been doing this since I was born.
Yeah.
I eat it up. I breathe, I'm so not afraid. And Sinister scares the shit out of me.
I have movies like that. It's so like when you earlier said the Hereditary, that I of recent, it just, that's something in it, and The Conjuring. Those are what I put it. But the other week, because I think it's on Netflix or one of the streaming channels, woke up. So if I sleep over at any one of your houses, I'll wake up early as shit, especially if we were drinking the night before, and I'll put on a horror movie. It's just a first thing in the morning. And I put on Sinister, and like I fell asleep to it, and people are walking like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It's just on." And I get scared. I want to say this before, but that's when I was like, "Do I this?" So I wonder if I did try it at night, though, I would.
Watching it this time, I don't know how you guys feel about this. I feel like there's some really excellent sound design, specifically like when they're watching the videos and they drop out all the sound, they just let the reels go. That's all really good. But I also feel like there's some overdone jump scares, and maybe I'm just like too sensitive to it now. There's like a couple that I would have pulled back on a little bit, because I feel like some of the other stuff is handled so tactfully. They almost stick out. They almost like jump out too much. But I mean, that's probably that's probably the point.
So,
it's just the point in the movie where you wanted to evoke that emotion. It just didn't. I was definitely like vibing on some of the stuff you're talking about, but there were a couple of moments that kind of took me out of it with a little more, maybe, and who knows, studio note, God only knows what could have been.
I think Jason Blum,
studio note, I'm sure.
I have a few like fun facts here, and I'm just gonna make a guess for some of the jump scares, one of which I think Jason Blum really like put his hands in afterwards and was like, "Got to go back and do that," because I do think Scott Derrickson's a pretty thoughtful director and good horror storyteller. But the last like pop of Bughuul at the before the credits roll, Jason Blum was like, "You got to add that in. We need a scare."
Like, my last note of my notes is like, what a cool hard ending, like good horror ending, and then a stupid Bughuul jump scare at the very end. Like, what a piece of crap! I was so mad about it.
I was
like, I love a good mean horror ending where like the bad guy wins. Like everybody loves. We were just talking about The Mist. Everybody loves the good, mean, nasty horror ending.
It's the rare movie where they introduce a like an iconographical, like a a slasher essentially, but there's no final girl. There's none of this. No one's trying to figure out to stop Bughuul.
It's dark.
Like, as soon as
it's a dark movie.
Kind of figures out, it's just like, well, you're dead.
Yeah.
I'm a big. I'm big on. I always cue in on bad dads in movies, and like, and he is not only a bad dad, he's just a terrible person. They've never try to make him likable. They never try to give him a redeeming quality ever. So I had to give him that one. That was pretty good.
What was what was interesting about looking some stuff up, and I remember when it happened, and Courtney, you said, what I'm going to say here is, they did a study when they sampled 50 of the highest rated movies, horror movies, through IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, Reddit, and like, I guess, miscellaneous lists, and probably averaged them out. And basically they sampled heart rates for the whole thing. Sinister was the one that invoked the highest BPM, beats per minute, than any other movie. So your average is 65 beats per minute. Sinister jumped to an average of 86 beats per minute while watching the film, and an increase of 30%. And it was the highest among the sampled. And I think that has a lot to do with, you were saying, Courtney, imagine you do the study, put them in a dark room, probably have a good sound system, and you're immersed. Like, that is probably the...
I would also like to do a second study that, like, put Sinister with some more suspense driven movies rather than just horror, and see how it compared with those, because I get that you would think that maybe
like,
it's more the sustained heart rate because of the tension
like
that
some
it
like
is
Prisoners,
of like really horror, like real graphic horror stuff, which would just give you a lot of peaks, but they're short, like short spikes, jump scares, and like yeah, I'd be interested to see that. Not to not to critique the criteria here, but
before we like I read the synopsis and we start kind of going through it, did either guys see this in theaters? I have a very specific story of seeing this in theaters, and
I don't think I did. No,
so I did.
I
I
saw
was
it at home.
Opening weekend. I was a senior in college. No, I'm sorry. I was a junior in college, and I just started dating my wife, my now wife, and she hates horror movies. She absolutely can't stand them. But you know, when you first start, you first start off with your, you know, with your partner or whomever, and you don't really know, and you're like, maybe you're just overreacting or this and that. So that's where that was, and we went to a Dorney
you
Park.
See the right one, you know.
We went to Dorney Park with my roommate and his girlfriend and also now wife, and which is just a amusement park, and it was their like Fright Fest thing, and she's like, I can handle this. It's no big that's no big deal. I was like, okay. We're at the Fright Fest for most of the evening, and then my friend and his girlfriend go, do you guys want to go see this Sinister? And her me at that time not knowing how to read her, and me also at that time, I mean, this is early, going, I'm in, and her not wanting to say no, going, like, sure, why not?
Your film bro tendencies were still like budding.
So lucky she married you. I would have been like, you're on your own, dude.
and today I would be like, just go to a different theater, or like we'll go something else. We don't have to do that.
But you know better now.
We see Sinister. I'm like, I think out of 3 out of 4, like that was scary, but we're all into horror. She's like, I just stared at the floor the whole time and
that's a brutal one. That shit's scary, man.
So I think she listened to the whole fucking movie, and before she was sitting here, she goes, oh, why'd you put that DVD up? It's gonna give me nightmares. I'm like, it's gonna give me nightmares. Just stop.
The DVD cover is gonna give me nightmares.
But it was that within the first year. It was that, and the other one where I was like, it'll be fine, was the Evil Dead remake. And I've since to this day yearly I apologize for the Evil Dead remake one, because I'm like, that one was on me, where I was like,
just as irresponsible.
You want to go to the movies? And it was like the bloodiest thing they had put in the theater since like Terrifier 2.
Yeah.
But horrific. So that's what I think of. I can never not think of now with Sinister, and I've seen it a few times since, and like you kind of said, Courtney, it's scary, but there's a lot of goofiness, and the more I see it, the more I notice those things. Having said that, I do like to read the synopsis on here before we begin and see if it's accurate. True crime writer Ellison Oswald is in a slump. He hasn't had a bestseller in more than 10 years and is becoming increasingly desperate for a hit. So when he discovers the existence of a snuff film showing the deaths of a family, he vows to solve the mystery. He moves his own family into the victims' homes and gets to work. However, when the old film footage and their clues hint to a presence of supernatural force, Ellison learns that living in the house may be fatal. So that's actually Google usually
Google's getting really good, honestly.
Usually terrible at
I'd say they've been pretty good the last couple times. I think AI's writing them now. It used to be some intern who had never seen the movie.
Facts.
And now Google just like takes it off the back of the box and slaps it on, and that's it. It's done.
AI wrote my email to Courtney to ask her to come on this show, and that's why it was so well written. So
I'm gonna lean on that shit so hard until it takes over the world. Even then, honestly, I'm kind of okay. Speaking of Stephen King, like Maximum Overdrive style, I'll gas it up. It sounds like a nice break, honestly.
I like the idea. It'll just pacify me. It'll like show me what I want to see, and it's like, that Matrix thing doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah, I'm fine.
We'll be
fine with it. It will be fine.
As long as I can just be like an art director and like tweak the stuff, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But no, we start the movie off. I mean, it can only go up kind of from here in the sense of
it's a solid start. I'll say it is a very solid start.
The Rube Goldberg aside of like an entire family.
Well, it took
very grim stuff.
For me, it takes the second watch to see the invisible cut, the saw, the branch saw, because at first it's like, you know, I'm not paying attention. I'm paying attention to 4 bodies dropping.
Yeah.
And that starts, and then we, you know, it's just family moving into this house, and we're introduced to not Kelsey Grammer. Doesn't the sheriff look like that could be like Kelsey Grammer's brother?
Yeah, I could see that.
And he kind of talks like him too.
Yeah, definitely trained at the same like theater academy. He's got that vibe. I actually was thinking specifically how well he delivered those lines, because that writing is a little shaky, and I was like, that guy, I'm believing it. He actually sold those lines really well.
Yeah, this movie, see the shaky writing and like performances. This movie, solid performances. I think everyone delivers. I don't know why. I think it's the Vincent D'Onofrio webcam. It has
literally phoned it in.
It has the same like energy as in the Paranormal Activity movie, the first one, how people will just pop in to say a line and then pop out, and it's always like same with the webcam, like really badly delivered, and I couldn't get that out of my head during this watch.
Yeah,
there's a scene in Paranormal Activity where like they talk to like someone like D'Onofrio's character, and it's like the worst performance I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah, the sheriff is
but he's good. The sheriff's good.
Sure, that's Fred Thompson. He's a guy from like Law and Order and stuff like that, and he's in like Die Hard 2, and I think he ran I think he might have run for office recently, like in the last couple of years also.
Interesting.
So interesting.
He's Kelsey
guy.
Grammer's
I don't know
evil twin
about him too, but I knew I had seen him before, and he's always, you know, solid character actor for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so we did get that introduction, and already, like, you know, I mean, they tell us basically something's afoot here. We learn instantly Ethan Hawke is a true crime writer that I guess we're to believe he just wrote a couple duds that turned out to be not wrong, but one hit that actually helped the case.
The sheriff definitely implies that not only he had one that hit that everybody likes, but then he did a couple other ones, and maybe even like
got a bad guy out.
Implied some things that got a guy who did the crime off, or like implied some doubt. So definitely has slipped, I guess.
But you could say
he's very desperate. Very desperate.
We established the immediate. It's actually fucking wild. I mean, I don't have kids yet, but like the daughter's immediately painting on the walls. It's like, all right, I don't know how long you've been there, but go for it. We established like they give a nice job of, I think, of establishing all of his characters. His wife's like, okay,
well, and also they set up. We were let in right away. Like, I didn't know how you guys feel about the kind of liar revealed trope in a movie where like you're given that ahead of time and you always know it's going to come to pass, and you're kind of like, I think it kind of mixed results for me in a lot of cases. I think it pays off pretty well in this one because they never try to make you like Ethan Hawke, so it's fine that he's a shitty liar the whole time, you know. But like some movies, it happens a lot in romantic comedies. I think, you know, you have a guy, somebody who's, you know, they're like harboring a secret, and you're waiting for it to come out, and you're like, you're supposed to be a good person.
I'd like to see
blah,
this
blah, blah.
re-edit it as a rom-com.
Sure, absolutely. Now, but is it him romantically involved with Bughuul? Like he's like seeing pictures and getting like, ooh,
get a little flustered.
You find out that he was like really into Slipknot when he was a teen, so like Bughuul's really doing it for him.
Mr. Boogie. But no, we do a nice job of just like establishing, I think, the world we're about to enter. My immediate note though was, and I have this note way too many times, I don't know if you guys took this too, is, and I get they're just trying to build atmosphere in the movie, but like turn on some lights, guys.
I do have that note too, especially
when they're eating dinner.
That he's specifically looking around for something, and he walks from like dark room to dark room and never turns on a light or shines a flashlight on it. Nothing. I was like, just flip on a light, man. The power's not out or anything. Like they never established that.
Eating dinner. Also, how fresh was that tree cut too? Because I mean that thing is still leaned up to that tree where the bodies picked up like a week ago.
Yeah. That's he said it was he got a good price, motivated seller.
I felt bad to an extent for I'm gonna make sure I'm using names here for his wife Tracy until I was like, okay, but like you could do a little bit of like looking around. Especially with like weird shit going on. Just a little bit.
Like
there's not a woman in the
should
planet.
Be able to trust him, right? Like in theory.
Yeah, but I trust my wife 100% with everything. But the minute I'd have like a kid coming home and like drawing hanging things of people, like, I'm just gonna fire up in Google where we moved.
Yeah, I could not believe that Ethan Hawke didn't give it up after the kid went to school and came back, because like cat's out of the bag. Like 1 or 2 more days at best, the kid's gonna know what happened here. Like,
he even tried to hide it when, I know we're really jumping around here, but when his daughter was like, "Yeah, my friend who died in this house," and they didn't react to that. They were like, "Ah, well."
That old bitch talking about weird shit again. The artsy one. Yeah. No, I mean, I've purchased homes. You Google the shit out of them. You go on the tax assessor site. You look it up, and there's no way, especially after she'd been burned already. He already moved them into the house down the street or whatever. Yeah.
So I give her everything to a fault.
Yeah.
Also,
a lot
she's from Australia, so
it's Australia. Okay,
I
wasn't sure.
She doesn't
Ireland
know.
Or Australia.
She's chill.
Oh yeah,
she's
at
laid back.
The very first scene, I thought she was trying to do an American accent badly, but then I realized that no, she was just fully Australian, and that's fine. They just let her be Australian, which I think more things should do.
Oh
just let people be from wherever.
Like you could meet your partner from Australia or.
Yeah,
wherever in the world.
Yeah, I think it makes it a little bit more interesting. Ben, who I mentioned, who's my kind of my muse, my favorite performer on my podcast. He lives in London. He's British, and we filmed a short actually this summer. He was in New York for a month doing a play, and I flew him out here after the fact. And I live in kind of a weird small town, and the story takes place in a 911 call center, and he's the operator, and he said, "Do you want me to do an American accent?" And I was like, "No, I think it's actually weirder if you're some random Brit living in some random tiny town in the United States working night shift, and it's like just adds a little extra something.
Right, it adds a little to their backstory with no effort.
What's wrong with this guy?
Well, you've been through some shit because you had to move across an ocean, so that's something right there.
Exactly. What are you trying to escape? Yeah,
it can so much more interesting.
Yeah, so it can backfire. It can work in the opposite direction, but I think in some cases
this one it works, and it's not like he goes like, I moved back to. She doesn't.
Well,
at one point she doesn't take the kids.
I also think
I'm going to Australia with the kids.
It is a better threat,
right? That's what I'm saying. It works because the threat really cashes in when she's like, "I'm leaving." That means something because she's going to fucking Australia.
I'm going an entire day away. You're going to do game
now, literally the farthest I could possibly go.
Now I have a question about that and the lore of this movie, and is if they did split, right? Like he goes to their old house and she's like, "I'm going to Australia." Who does Bughuul follow? Does he?
I would say he probably follows the little kids.
Child. Yeah.
Because he's the
boogeyman. Yeah.
But
he's already
because at least one, he needs at least one of them, so he probably just goes where they go.
Right.
This is true.
Speaking of the house, did anybody else get a real like Shining vibe about the inside of the house, where it seems much bigger than the outside? The outside seems like a very conventional, like brick ranch style house. I've lived in those kind of houses. And in the inside, he's got like the big drawing room, and there's like hallways with full bedrooms everywhere, and a big dining room and stuff. And I'm
Each
like,
kid has their own
where's
bedroom.
where's all that space?
That's why they kept the lights off. They were trying to disorient you so you wouldn't notice how much bigger the inside of the house is than the outside of the house.
Like I said, anything like that anymore, I just chalk it up to I just pretend they meant to do it. Oh, that's an artistic choice.
Oh yeah,
House of Leaves.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was all atmosphere, like, but it's a main note of like, come on, like they were eating dinner in the dark. They had all light, and I'm like, you don't even.
Times are tough. He's got 2 mortgages. He can't afford to keep lights on during dinner.
And when you finally see, like, I realized when they go back to the old house at the end, I was like, oh, no wonder this little girl was complaining. That place is a shithole. You guys were living in like the McAllister house.
Yeah, they were in a mansion.
This place is a mansion. And then you moved her into like this little crappy ranch in the burbs. Like, yeah, I bet she was pissed.
Even that last shot.
What did you do with her horses, Papa?
Even that last shot, I mean, he's in even his beautiful big home. He's like, you know what? I just went through all this creepy shit. Let me watch these videos and read it. In the dark with the fire going.
Can we talk about though how he savored them?
Can we? That's what I want. That's what I want to. That was right where I was going. Next with it is, so we do get to our first video. He finds this box, and the man. What did I wrote it? He savored the perfect way. He didn't say, I'm an investigative crime officer with these snuff films. He was like, just like a nightly, like if someone gives you like
pour your whiskey.
Yeah, he like sets the
like
mood.
weed,
Like,
and you're like, well, I got to make this like weed work out.
Else,
so like it's smart. Toke up like every 2 nights. He was like, all right, new tape. Fucking weird. It was weird.
It's weird. I mean, at the very least they could have done is sneaked him into the house slowly or something. It appears every day, but the idea, the idea that he finds all of them and they're each 35 seconds long, and he just watches them over
it's just
like a week.
A really tightly edited shot of a couple shots of the family, and then some Saw style as if done by HGTV traps. Like you got like the home the home garden improvement, just the ones that everyone has some kind of. I felt like, speaking of Jason, that's what it felt like to me. I was like, I expected them to use like a weed whacker, because they got the lawnmower in there, they got the tree trimmer in there, they're using the
chairs
pool, the garage, it's a car in a garage full of tools that burn up. I don't know, I just was getting a real like
this old house vibe.
This old house vibe, exactly.
Bughuul really like found his niche in like the nuclear family of like the 1960s, and was like, doesn't get better than this, guys. We got a camera, I got some lawn tools. What else does one need to kill?
Bughuul is looking for those like trad families, because he wants you to have the more kids the better for Bughuul. Like these days, these millennials not having kids,
Gen Z.
Tough times for Bughuul.
He'd feast on the Brady Bunch house. The Brady's. But we do get that first video. I love that you brought up that he savored it, because
it drives me crazy.
It
drives me absolutely nuts. There's so many ways to explain it, or like just get it out of my brain, because it's all I can think about.
Is a little wild, and I don't want to ruin for you even further. Is he's writing a book about this disappearance of this girl. The family was murdered in the house. The girl's disappearing, and he's convinced maybe she's alive. He sees her, or at least the family, in the one video, and also just chooses to sit on it.
Right.
Oh, he makes the conscious effort. They do the moment where he's going to call the cops.
Yeah.
And he even gets 911 on the line. And then he's like,
"Ooh,
no,
I'm really on to something
I'll
here.
break this whole case, and it'll also make my career." He's like, "I'll still solve these crimes."
But like Courtney says,
but
he doesn't go to the other
mental gymnastics.
He doesn't go back and keep watching just to confirm that he's on to something. He goes night night and finds his kid in the box, or whatever happens next. Yeah.
And
maybe that's how they. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It's messy.
It is messy. think I've seen the sequel. I know I saw the sequel, but I don't remember it, so I'm gonna just say I never saw it.
Good. Yeah.
It was like more about the kids stuff, which wasn't as interesting. But like
good.
Mr. Boogie writes out, pool. He's funny. He's a funny guy because he's like pool party 2011 or like whatever. Like he hears it.
Yeah, he's got jokes.
Hanging around or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't know.
I was getting a real like Manhunter Red Dragon vibe from the videos too, right? Like watching the videos of the family before you kill them and stuff. Very, very weird. Very Richard Harris stuff. Or Thomas Harris.
I like later in the movie too when we get the extended cuts as for the end and like Ethan Hawke's like, well, I guess I gotta edit them together.
Yeah, he made a super cut. We gotta digitize these so I can make them, so I can chop them up, put them on TikTok.
Oh, these would be great TikToks. Community guidelines would go crazy.
Yeah, they love it.
But I do think part of the ritual we learn later, so he kills a scorpion, and I actually think that's what starts it off for me.
It's in the stuff that Vincent D'Onofrio. They don't talk too much about it. They leave it, which I actually have to give them credit for. They don't overly explain it.
Like that. The less lore we explain with the looting, that's why I like to myself, like, oh, did him crushing the scorpion kind of set him off on this path after
he does that before he even sees the box, right? So that's like with the films in it. So that's like probably what like starts the whole chain.
Yeah, like if he doesn't touch the box,
demon.
Does it and like I know I try to figure out how to watch those Super 8s. I'd be like, ooh, I'm a film nerd, cool, Super 8s, and I'd play with the camera and I watch them and then I go, ooh, those look real. And I call the cops, and then I'd still be dead because I don't think they stop. Mr. Boogie stops because the cops
does Bughuul not? You have to watch them all. If you don't, he's Bughuul's a completionist. So if you don't watch the whole thing, you're off the hook. If he wouldn't have made the super cut, he would have got away.
Totally.
Oh, but it's the worst part is it is like a creepy movie, but it is one of those
it's so close. And I wonder, I hadn't really thought about you bringing up like the jump scares and things. And there's a lot of over explanation, like as he's writing, where's Ashley or Stephanie or whatever.
He like rewrites that down a couple times while he's like, it's already, we know that's what you're here for. Like, you would not need to rewrite that to remind yourself that you're here to remember.
Exactly. So there's a lot of hand holding, and I feel like it's a smarter movie than that. And so I wonder if a lot of those things were added, and even Vincent D'Onofrio, like, I just.
The way he Skyped in and stuff, obvious. Like you could totally see that being a studio note of like, no, we need
like a
honestly,
later.
I could see the whole like a lot of the Bughuul stuff being like that being additional. Like I could see him having him appear in the pictures, but not really explaining, and then you just basically find out that
you know what
just
it reminds
that possesses the kids, and that's all that you know about him.
Yeah, it's fucking creepy. That would be great. Wouldn't that be a great horror movie without all that?
It would be much like we talked to me off mic. We talked about that.
Yes.
And another one, like no extra, no superfluous, no moment to go to the library and look at the microfiche and try to figure out. You don't need it. Just cut the fat. You don't need
it. Especially in a movie like this that's so strong and you've done so much so well. And
like I said, the video, this not only the sound design, but the actual content of all the kills.
It's
like
terrifying.
I made a joke about the HGTV thing, but like they are legitimately very upsetting. The one where it slowly drags them and drowns them in the pool that's an incredibly creative and upsetting.
What
and
is
I like
the
that
scariest?
They talk about go ahead, Joe. What'd you say?
So what's the scariest one for you guys? I know for me,
I think that one's the scariest one for me, just because I've spent so much time in the pool.
Would be the other one.
Drowning is very scary to me.
Yeah. And that one, when you realize the pool one, when you realize like what's going on at first, remember, like I didn't realize what was happening.
Oh, it takes a second to see, how it's playing out.
But no, for me,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was say for me, and I think you guys are talking about like it is a smart movie and this and showing things. What if this movie worked and we didn't, we used something that is a now urban legend in the world and this. I mean, it could easily be a Slender Man story.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
But like, just that imagery, sans the shitty movie and like overdone, could work really well here.
Yeah. It's evocative. It's really, and the creature, Bughuul is scary. He looks scary. He's a good monster. You know, like they did a good job designing him. They did a good job implementing him for the most part. And yeah, I think that this is a good movie that had too many hands in it, probably. Yeah. And I was actually, I was at the Overlook Film Festival this year, and I met these directors who made a movie called Late Night with the Devil. Have you guys come across it yet? It's not been distributed. It's fantastic. But the brothers who directed it, Cameron and Colin Carnes, keep an eye out. It's such a good movie. But they had just seen Talk. It'll be
on my radar for sure.
Yeah, they had just seen Talk to Me. They had a secret like premiere or a showing of that there. And anyway, we were talking about distribution, and they had met with Blumhouse and said they're just like all the other distribution companies and, you know, studios, and we were talking about financing and things, and I asked if they're from Australia, had they gotten any American financing, and they said no, because all American studios just want you to put dumb shit like that in there, and they're just not willing to do that to their movies. So
good for them. I mean,
yeah,
I'll keep an eye out for that.
No, it was very inspiring to meet them. It was well timed, and I channel them a lot, doing different things and having different conversations. But that is one thing that drives me crazy about horror is exactly that, and it's so not necessary. And I just give the audience some credit, especially a horror audience. And I know that horror movies are bringing people into the theater, and this is part of the reasons that studios are investing so much into it. But
I'd like to. I know I liked the movie when I watched it, but comparatively, I'd like to go back and like watch The Black Phone, right? The other Ethan Hawke, Scott Derrickson,
which
movie.
I didn't. The
kind of Sinister reunion movie almost.
Yeah,
even the guy who's the cop who from the It
Mr.
movies.
So and So.
I liked him in this. I liked him in this. I love the line about what is it? The whiskey bottle that's never going neglected. Not gone neglected.
I'm not judging.
Yeah,
but like, come on, man.
Such a good one. Come on, you're judging. You're a cop, and you're calling me out.
I like the scene that they have also too. Is that scene as well, where like now Ethan Hawke's being like, I'm not really into supernatural stuff. Yeah, something, and a lot has happened in his life too before they get to this point where the so and so goes, I do. You should leave.
He's like, I would never spend a night in here. I love that line too. He's like, I would never sleep here. Are you kidding?
But that's when early on, I know, like you said, like Ethan Hawke's character a piece of shit, but I even have a note of just like, he's so mean and dismissive to so and so. And like, just like, oh, you're just some dumb ass that lives like, you're just some dumb hick that like, sure, you know, fan. And it was like, oh, because before that, the guy was just like a shitty, like, I mean, like a shitty dad and husband, but not even in a sense we would even see, except for just lying to his wife for that. But like to everyone else around him, just a complete fucking prick.
Here's a question too, because one of the things I like about horror, and I think one of the things I learned from Stephen King, is if you make your characters likable, it's way worse when they die.
Oh my God, yeah.
And don't you think he would have played better as a super likable character? It would have been much spookier and more awful if he was like really fighting for his family and shit.
Oh, for sure.
But I think the problem is you run into is like you start to make him a good guy, and then you can't justify the things he's doing.
Yeah, he's got to make those immoral decisions.
Right, he's got to make those decisions, and he can't if you make him likable, because no likable person would do that.
And I guess you don't really, you know, we don't live in any world where you go, you know, hey honey, we're gonna move into a murder house with our kids. You're cool with that, right? Unless like she's involved in the producing of the book and things like that.
Yeah, then you don't have a family, and that's the whole point. Because if you need the family for the Bughuul to show up.
But Courtney, you're right though, of the sympathy of a character, even in something silly horror like Evil Dead Rises or something, right? That's high and silly. Like I know when I saw that, I felt bad when Deadite Ellie changed because they made that character, that mother, likable. And
yeah.
What I would say about this is, like, you wouldn't have had to really even make him that likable, but you're talking about Officer So-and-so, just have him have a little bit more of a buddy relationship with Officer So-and-so and not be so rude and
that's a
dismissive.
good way to do
Wouldn't
it.
have really changed how shitty he was in general,
He's a
but it
friend.
just would have given him a little bit more like personality. So like maybe something subtle like that you could have got away with.
I mean,
totally. That's all it
Ethan,
takes.
Ethan Hawke was loving Blumhouse at this time. I think like the next year he does The Purge.
Oh yeah. Like I said, genre guy. He loves it.
Yeah,
but,
who
was it Buddy T? Was it you or TJ who just watched Daybreakers recently?
That'd have been TJ. I haven't watched Daybreakers.
Yeah, nice vampire Sam Neill.
That's not good though, is it? I don't think.
What's good? What's an early 2000s? It's an early 2000s vampire movie, that's for sure. So
it's goofy.
It's a sliding scale.
Yeah,
on a scale of Underworld to Twilight, where does it land? Who knows?
Sure, it's what I could put on after this recording and comfortably sit on my phone while going, oh yeah, I'm not too scared.
I remember a lot of vampires in fancy suits. That's really all I remember.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
sounds good. Sounds pretty good.
Sounds pretty cool, actually. I don't know.
But so we do get that in his investigation, right? He goes through the videos and we've kind of revealed some of them. And meanwhile, the one thing we haven't mentioned is we have the stuff with his kids going on. We reveal his kid is a sleepwalker. And for the story wise, I think to give us that ending punch, they neglect the daughter stuff pretty much for the whole movie. They're kind of like
almost to the point where it becomes kind of obvious that something's gonna go on with her, like because they've kind of set the son up too much. They need to balance it a little bit. The
son is I know it's the trailer shot, right? Him crawling out of the box,
exorcisting up out of the box,
and it's just him just weirdly sleepwalking. And but through this, Ethan Hawke every night, because he's a jerk, in the dark watching his films, I think Courtney froze.
She'll come back.
We'll get I will write a note.
Make a note for you, Seth.
Yeah. All right, so there might be a weird jump here. I have a different shirt on. Me and Brian are matching. Yeah, snap, we're on. And that's because it's about 2 weeks later, and during the earlier conversation, Courtney's, there was a storm going on, and so we're resuming. So we're still talking Sinister, and if I'm not mistaken, we were just going to mention, we never really delved into the kids' issues with the movie, and like how they're integral to the Ethan Hawke's kids are integral to the plot. Not Maya Hawke, but like the kids in the movie. Not his,
just randomly also Maya Hawke, very important.
Yeah, not his Nepo baby. So you guys did have I think other things to add and stuff like that to it. So what are you guys thinking?
Well, real quick, but when we were talking about the kills or the death scenes, it reminded me, we're talking about how good they are, which of them was our favorite. And I had been listening to Evolution of Horror the week before, and they were doing right now they're doing Home Invasion. There's this season is Home Invasion, and they were talking about Funny Games, which is one of my all-time favorite horror movies, and talking about how in that movie everyone is the boys kill them with household items, and like the domesticity of that, and like how disturbing that is, and how it just leads into Michael Haneke's points, and adds to it. And so when we were talking about the kills, that's what it reminded me of, that all of the murders in that movie were done by like lawnmowers, lawn chair, things that are found around the home. And so I think for me that also adds to the creepiness of them, that it's just stuff you find around the house.
The only one that is more shock value without the found around the house thing is the intro hanging, right? Just because of how Rube Goldberg it is. Yeah. But everything else, the lawnmower and
but even that, it's a tree and some rope from the garage, and everyone's gone.
Yeah. And forgive me if I'm repeating a point. Like I said, it was 2 weeks ago, but I did also like the way they set up with Ethan Hawke the idea that all the kills are done in a way that someone could do them even without being strong. If the person was drugged, as long as they had done, everything was like counterweights and done with
right.
like it didn't take a strong person to do those kills. It was all done in a way that obviously the reveal ends up being a child, but at that point they're talking about
with
a man,
the help
woman,
of a demon.
Person.
With the help of a demon.
But I feel like the demon is just like encouraging them. They still like
in their
had
mind,
to do it
not
with their own
body.
tiny
You're
little
saying
arms.
he couldn't get convicted in a court of law?
Who's gonna cross Sinister 3 and The Conjuring 3 are gonna cross over and become one franchise?
Well, if the Conjuring universe had its way, it would.
Yeah.
Every movie would be a Conjuring movie if that franchise had its way.
They're trying. They're working on it
right now in the wake of The Nun 2, and
I know this is another
$1
million tangent here. In The Conjuring 3, I could never not think of that movie and just think Lorraine Warren just became like Professor X. She would
she's
sit down and just be like,
that one.
Full 3D vision, and I could stop you with my mind. Anyway, because there's also that one kill. They're in the beds in the one kill too.
Yeah.
Right, and it's pretty just more straightforward. Yeah, that's a really good point, Courtney.
Because it brings in a little bit of a home invasion sort of feel to it, which for me is the scariest kind of horror. I just don't like that at all.
Yeah, we were just talking about the strange. We were just talking about the
stranger. Exactly. Yeah. And so it does, cozy in their beds, in their pool, places that are very much about family and comfort, and then they're turned around and used to slaughter them.
Even the silly names that we have on the tapes are all like family barbecue, pool party, hanging out. I think apologies if I got anything wrong, but it and those are all things you do with them. Like they're very aware of this is the goof.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing with the kids too is both of his kids are doing weird shit throughout the movie, but we're chalked up to this has always been behavior.
Right.
Sleepwalking.
This is what happens when you let your kids be too artsy. You can't tell when they're getting weird on you. They're like, oh, they're a free spirit. Like, but are they? But come on, like maybe
Brian, your kid's been walking around with a Chucky doll since he's been like 3 years old.
Right, well, wait. My kid is not the concern here. Okay? I mean, he's gonna be, but right now we're fine. No, I did want to say I like when he was seeing the visions of the little ghost kids, and we're doing the kind of like, I didn't love, like, we're in this kind of, I mean, what was this, 2012? So we're like well into like the kind of post-Ring era, obviously. And I didn't really love the zombie makeup on the kids.
It's terrible.
What I thought terrible. Was really effective was the way they shoot the movement, like the kind of slow motion, like Ethan Hawke in regular motion, but the kids in kind of that ethereal kind of slow motion movement. That's all super effective. And I feel like if the kids, instead of making them look weird zombie, if they made them look more kind of like sepia tone or retro or kind of like they were almost
anything, honestly,
especially with the film dynamic already being in the movie, like maybe have that aesthetic with the ghosts. I don't know, something better than that like real generic that looked like some Spirit Halloween makeup.
No, it looked like my mom's good at doing my makeup for Halloween, and like I win the Halloween show, but not movie makeup. Like it's bad.
Shocking how bad it is. It takes you out of it completely. And I agree. Like did you guys see Pulse, the Japanese movie Pulse? Yeah, that movement is reminds me of that, and it's so good.
Shutter
and effect in that too.
Yeah, and like whatever frame rate they shot that in to get the ghosts to move that way. I'm assuming they probably borrowed that from Pulse, and it's so smart. Yeah, to your point, it's like really effective movement.
It's a
like ghoulish rings around their eyes.
Yeah, like the weird kind of like
Uncle Fester,
like poisony. They look like Tony Stark had that stuff in him in Iron Man 2, like kind of like creeping out.
Totally, Uncle Fester. Yeah,
yeah. It's It's a bummer too because you don't need a big budget to do good makeup like that, like for that level of makeup. And I think that's also why we're not talking about the sequel today, but like the sequel doesn't really work. I watched it once and it doesn't work because it's so focused
bad
on those kids.
Yeah.
And they didn't change the makeup.
Well, I definitely feel like, I think we talked about it a little last time, there's definitely like some producers or like some studios involvement, like, and I feel like maybe the reason the kids' makeup looks like that is maybe it's more of a digital thing they did post to make them look a little scarier. Like some producers note was like, can we scary up those? It's like the Bughuul jump scare at the end. We talked about how that's like how this movie has a great hard ass horror ending and then a stupid jump scare at the very end that's like something like an internet meme, like it literally
pops up in your face.
Picture and it pops in. It's literally just like that. And it's like, why would you do that? Scott Derrickson's a better director than that. Like,
maybe it was a studio note of that. I don't know. It definitely, it's definitely just like you said, it's just shoddy. But the positive of it, the effect of the kids' movement and all of that
is all excellent. Like I said, that's all really cool and gives a real creepy feeling, much like the stuff with the video.
Talking about home invasion and kind of trying to tie those two together is because there's that one scene where he runs out of the house with the baseball bat, right? And it's the first time you kind of get like a Children of the Corn shot of the kids in the background of the smoke, and Hawk's just there with the bat, and he's gonna, I guess, hit the dog. But the dog, stops barking when he sees the kids. And even then, I like that scene, but the kids in the background to me was always just a little too more. It felt too much like too cartoonish back there when it was like maybe if there was less of them, like you said, maybe it was more like a sepia tone look, and they were just can't really see them that much.
It is such a strange choice.
Like where he does it on the Netflix shows, The Haunting of, where it's a little more subtle. They're not like right there. They're kind of like in the background a little more.
That would work
real well. Blended in, kind of something like that. Mike Flanagan. That's why I couldn't think of his name.
Yeah, it's such a strange choice because the movie is it's a mean movie. It's like, it's a fucked up movie. And then to have this sort of goofy, it reminded me of Insidious because Insidious has that really nice, like lo-fi, a quality to it. It feels a little DIY, but in a good way. And I was like, I don't know if they're trying for that. I didn't. It's
maybe
really
they
strange.
It's right at that Insidious time.
Yeah,
too,
same
right. Yeah, and I kind of put them all in the same family. They're all Blumhouse, and they're all kind of around the same time. And so I didn't know. But it's really, really strange. It doesn't make any sense. I'm dying to know because that's when I think of Sinister. I think of the sound effects and I think of that stupid makeup. It makes me insane.
Because it's a fun mean horror movie.
Yeah.
Like so, and it's like the sound and we were
just like a couple things that are keeping it from being great. I think
I
mean.
I think it's part of the kids. It's some of the Bughuulness of it because at first, like, that first reveal of the head turn on the laptop, like, that's a creepy shot in almost any movie, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the kids, and then at the same time, like, I don't know, maybe they were just trying to utilize. Oh, creepy kids. I feel like someone gave them a note of like, make them creepier when like, I feel like less is more with creepy kids.
I 100% agree. Give them some black contacts, anything. You could do anything to make those kids creepy other than what they did. Put a bag over their head, anything.
You could have portrayed
the kids are creepy inherently.
You could have portrayed them more innocently, and then that would have made the ending hit even a little harder too. Like, if they come off more like innocent, victim ghosts, but like with the weird ghoulish faces, you're already kind of like, what I mean?
It's just
it just would have been better overall to do something else.
Scott Derrickson kind of does that with Black Phone. You get the victim ghosts, and they're well done. They're just looking like, ghost kids instead of Spirit Halloween.
It's totally Spirit Halloween. That's the only way to describe it. It's exactly what I think of when I see it. The pack that you got at Halloween time that's got the blue and the red, just enough, but it's terrible.
And the one picture, and you're like, we could do it this way, and it never will turn out that way.
Yeah, I was like, they don't give you any. They don't like.
It doesn't apply that
layering, clean. Right? They don't tell you about layering. They don't tell you about. No, they're not there to help you.
No contour at all. Just a ring.
There's one more thing I wanted to talk about with the ending that I thought was a cool, kind of fun, as a long-time horror person, you're watching the end of this movie, and they do the classic, like, we're leaving, we're out of here, we're leaving this house. And you're like, that never works. We all know that a possession demon movie, once it's attached to you, you can't leave, it's coming with you. But then this movie twists it even one step further to be like, no, you actually helped the demon. You, like, completed the circuit on this one. This is how it happens. Like, you had to leave to activate this, like, which is like a pretty great little moment. I thought, like, again, one of those things where I'm like, wow, they're really gonna stick the landing on this, and then that Bughuul face comes out. I'm like, what the fuck? What has happened here?
Seriously,
and you don't even like get to see like what the movie looks like of fucking Ethan Hawke's too. You just see that axe kind of being dragged. I also like that we don't bother being seen with the kid. With her brother and her mother being murdered. Their bodies are just in the background. We see Ethan Hawke because it's a story. I don't need to see. But you just mentioned the moving thing, and it makes me ask: the old families. Now, Ethan Hawke was rich and already had a second home. Like, he had his home still. What did happen with the other people?
They were still only because they couldn't sell the big house.
No, this is not the question. I know, but the other families that die, like, do they go, like, did they buy it? Did they go with a realtor? Do they buy a house? Do they get into the process of, these are just adult questions because I'm trying to buy a home.
Is it the pre-approval that
Joe's like, what was their interest rate in that, by the way?
Did they deal with the possessions? Well, the creepy shit that went on until they got there. Did they find the box of film strips?
Yeah, it was this like an Amityville situation where it was like propagating itself in that.
I'm just being a dickhead. No, but I think you guys are absolutely right, though. That ending would be so much greater and meaner if you just didn't get one, they didn't need to get one last Bughuul in there.
No, it's so unnecessary. So unnecessary.
It's really silly. It feels like it's out of a different movie.
It really does, yeah.
Or we could just add a different Bughuul scare, like use him differently in another scene.
I'm not against post, late stage jump scares. They're a staple of the genre. We all, I expected something. I just expected something better.
It's better than my all-time favorite, or one of my all-time favorites. Nightmare on Elm Street's final body through the tiniest window in the world.
So good.
That one always works for me.
It's my favorite. Dummy,
it always works for me.
So good.
I'm not upset with it. I am a fan of the driving away in the Freddy convertible.
Freddy car,
good. It's genius. It's like genius. Try to top that.
Yeah.
Go ahead and try.
You can't, but no. But this is right up there though. It's just like we could have done other things, but. Courtney, I remember you also mentioning with this movie, I apologize if we talked about this before, like your love of the sound design of this movie. And I did kind of want to know a little more about like what specifically stands out in this for you with that.
Yeah, I think it's just really unusual. It's sounds that you don't hear. They're not typical sounds. I do, a narrative horror podcast, and there are so many sounds that are used over and over and over again. I just did a short film and, sound designing that. I'm just like, we hear it, and it's, a lot of it is stuff that you are not paying attention to, obviously. You're feeling it more than you're hearing it. And I think that's part of the difference is that these sounds you're hearing, you're paying attention to them, and they're still so effective in their like getting into your bones kind of a feeling. And I did a little research on the sound designers who did the soundtrack and composed the weird shit, and they really like went to town dragging cello bows across cars and stuff, like really put their whole selves into compiling these weird, and I think a lot of it's just stuff being played backwards or whatever, but it's like
it's really pulled apart.
And it sounds really, it's so specific. Like they really created something unique, in my opinion. And having tried to recreate things like that, it's really hard to do. It's like it's hard to find that balance where it's not just goofy or annoying, where it's just like actually terrifying. And especially during the death scenes. Sure.
Oh my God. Some of those, I mean, even the random screams work better than most. Hey, we put a scream in here. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think we definitely talked about last time too, like dropping out the sound and just the patter of the film going.
Oh, that's
around.
what I say. That's my favorite part.
Starting with that, and then like everything kind of builds from that to it's such a kind of such a creepy like low level hum in the background of those scenes.
Even what they play, I know. I'm not up to date on my technicals. I don't know if it's the sound, the mixing, or whatever. But even when they play that kind of, I guess, whatever the loose term of their score would be when they're driving, they're driving out of the house at that night. It's such a unique, like, you feel that emotion dump of like they're getting out of there.
Yeah.
The other thing I just lost my thought. The other thing they do real well is, sorry, I completely lost where I was going.
You're like, oh no, wait.
Sorry, apologies, but no, they do a good. It does kick you in, and this is what I want to do. I want to bring it back to where I think we first talked about is. I think that's why it was put in that scientific study.
Definitely.
Of it, number one, because it's using so many other things to kind of keep you that terror up, and it does let you relax, which is really nice. I know the three of us before we jumped on also had a pretty candid conversation about Hereditary and all of that, and that's one that, like, if I'm going to compare the two, which is odd, is more of my two recent ones, is that's one that doesn't let you relax when it starts, then it goes, and it doesn't give you that moment to go like, okay, like, let me get scared again. It just, her Sinister does a really good job at, okay, we're going to spend some time in the investigation.
Yeah, little comedy relief and stuff. But I think you're absolutely right, and I think that I'm surprised that more movies don't use sound that way. And it's just something that I'm really clued into. But I can, like the Joker, the soundtrack of the Joker is phenomenal. Just like these movies that put that little bit of extra time into this specific sort of sound. But I think you're right about the physiologically. I think that sound is so effective, and it really adds. I mean, they crafted these insanely scary deaths, and then they put the sound on top of it, and it's just like, get me out of here, I don't want to be, even if you're not like registering it on a conscious level, making you uncomfortable, like you're not sure, you might not even like be tuned into what you're hearing, but it is like affecting you. Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. So for that reason, that movie has always stood out, and that's why I chose this movie, because I do an audio podcast, and figuring out how to scare people through only their ears is a huge challenge. It's hard to figure out how to show and not tell. I don't know if you know anything about writing, but you don't want to tell people what they're supposed to be scared of. You're supposed to show them. In movies, it's obvious, it's easy because you can literally show them. But in just writing and audio, I love it. I love the challenge of it. I'm obsessed by it. But it is, it's different. It's just different because it's a lot of shit comes out goofy. And imagine
and then the door
coming around the door.
So then it creaked, and then you hear, and it's like, okay.
I always think of
scream.
The worst radio commercials are the ones that try to like describe a joke to you. You know what I mean? Like I'll be listening and they'll be like, just tell me what the product is. They're trying to like do a setup, and that's the thing you're talking about. You're running into it's like, no, you want to make it feel natural and not like you're like, okay, now here comes something scary, so everybody get real nervous.
Exactly.
Well, that's and then you're writing a narrative with that too, so it's even harder than something like, I know you run true crime also. Like what 99? I was in 90% of people listen to true crime, and like I've gotten creeped out by listening to true crime, but that's also there's that reality factor in there, and it's just the contents of it than the actual narrative someone wrote.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So very interesting. But anything else with the Sinister you guys want to add? I do like. Even though it was 2 weeks ago, I do feel like we did cover a lot in this, and I think so too. Like most of my thoughts out. It's definitely a fun one to put in the rotation, and my goal is to convince the friends that I have that are like, no, that's the one I can't put on again. To be like, you can. It's not that bad. Yeah, it's not that intense.
Unless you ask me, and I'm like, no, every time scares the shit out of me. That's
why I want to trick them.
Yeah.
Well, I think Scott Derrickson does a good job of that. He has a balance there where like it does at times feel like a kind of watchable background like dad movie, like the investigative elements kind of feel that way sometimes, like a like a 90s thriller almost, but then it does but it goes super dark too then.
If this was, I mean, it was a hit. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a financial hit. But if this was like a movie from like, let's say, I don't know, 2003, and it ran on that cable run of the 2010-ish of like, USA or TNT, this thing would be like, it would be right there with like how people are like, oh yeah, and then The Shining's on because it's been on TV your whole life.
Totally.
Or like The Shawshank. I just named it
urban legend,
Yeah. Like it's there, and you're like, "Ooh, it's kind of interesting." Yeah, spooky. Yeah, okay. But reality is, it just didn't get its cable run. I don't think.
Yeah, no, and I think, like we said, it's almost a really great movie. It would be if there were just a couple little things, and it's very hard to make a movie. And I'm sure in retrospect, or with studio interference, they're probably like, God, it's so close. It's like so close to being one of those movies that people talk about, I think, as like a movie.
I think people
I would definitely say that it's like only those few little tweaks for being on the same level of like fondness people have for The Conjuring, you know what I mean? Something like that. That level of popularity, or even the Insidious movies that are still getting sequels now.
James Wan's, I said, those are saved. Those are saved by James Wan's good editing and lack there of showing you anything for a while. And those are different conversations. But cool. Yeah, no, this is great. I was very happy to revisit.
It's so fun.
Courtney,
it's so fun to talk about horror.
It is. I think that's why we had trouble even hitting record on this one earlier. Talking about.
Hold on, let's stop our horror conversation so we can have our horror conversation.
I'm like, no, I'm all in.
Well, Courtney, you are welcome back anytime. I do believe at the start of this show you did say what your plugs, but I would just give it to me again because I just want to make sure we get them in, and I'm not going to go back and listen to them.
Yeah, no problem. Please Leave podcast is the narrative horror podcast. It's weekly. Every Tuesday we put those out everywhere you find your podcast. And then They Will Kill is my true crime podcast. That is every Wednesday, everywhere you get your podcast. And that one's a conversational podcast with my sister, but we cover a different murder every episode. So it's not neither of them are serial. So check them out.
Awesome. Check them out, guys. All right. You know where to find us. You're here, Flyover State of Fear. We're still tweeting these out while that thing's still going on. So
we're on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter. You can also find us on Blue Sky, though. Look out.
And YouTube and Spotify and any audio. This all gets ripped. All right.
TikTok. That's where we found each other. TikTok.
Yes, and on TikTok. I'm making TikToks now. All right. Stay frightful, everyone. Well. Flyover State of Fear.